on Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, and Scene 4, giving you some feedback on what you guys came up with, answering these questions and kind of clarifying things when I can. All right, so first one was just a poll question. Been able to convince Romeo to love someone else. Many of you guessed correctly. If you've ever been, if you thought somebody was attractive or cute or whatever it was, you pretty much can't get that out of your head no matter what your friends tell you. So I think it's a good call. All right, so we kind of switch gears here. We've been talking a lot to the Montagues, which is Romeo's family, and now we're finally going to the Capulets, and we're talking to Juliet's dad and Paris, who is a man who is trying to court Juliet. He wants to marry her. Little side note is that Paris is a cousin or a relative of the prince. The prince is the guy who broke up the fight and said, if either side fights again, then you're done. We're going to start killing people. So Paris is related to the prince. That's important later on. Okay, so Paris asks, is this good? Is this a good deal? And Capulet says that my child is too young. She's a stranger in the world. She has not seen the change of 14 years. So this goes with that question. How old is Juliet? Well, she's 13. A lot of you saw the number 14 and went, boom, she's 14. She has not seen the change of 14 years, so she would be 13. Okay, so she's 13. So let's keep that. She is very, very young. Now, Paris is not that much older than her, but he is significantly older than her in the scheme of things. Paris's comeback is younger than she or Happy Mother's Maid. There are girls that are younger than Juliet who are pregnant and who are mothers at this point, which is, some people think it's kind of gross or creepy, but that's the way it was back then. Girls were married and mothers a lot younger than they are now. Okay. Capulet says that I understand that, but she's my only daughter. Her earth has swallowed all my hopes, but she's my only child I have left. So I'm very protective of her. But if you can woo her, then meaning if you can get her to like you, I have no problem with you marrying her. But I will only agree to that if she likes you. Now, that was a lot different than a lot of the other parents would say at this time. And you're actually going to do an assignment later on this week where you're going to ask your parents some similar questions, but this was not common for this to happen. It was usually my father said this, that's what happens, and the girl pretty much had very little say in that. Okay, so that's she says, oh, actually, I'm having a party a little bit later on, so this will be a great opportunity for you to do that. Okay, so he gives a list of people that he wants to invite to the party to a serving man, and he says, go find these people. Okay, so to answer this question, and this was pretty split amongst everybody, okay, it would be this answer, which is Capulet wants Paris to get Juliet to like him and want to marry him. Okay, but as I said, almost 25% across the board for each choice there. Okay, so the serving man has a problem. The problem, the serving man, he can't read. So he needs to find someone who can read this list, and he just happens to bump to Benvolio and Romeo, and still continuing their conversation from the previous scene about look for other beauties, look for people that are other girls, they're other from the city. Okay, so every man asks him, can you read? He says yes. They read all of these names, okay, and they realize this is a Capulet party because there's some, references here. My uncle Capulet, so on and so forth. Okay, then it goes on, and the serving man actually invites them as well. Oh, you've been such a great help to me. If you're not a Montague, which they both are, I pray you come to the party. And then Benvolio says, oh, this is a great opportunity that I was looking for to see other people, because there's going to be this girl, Rosaline. That's the girl that Romeo loves. He does not love Juliet. He loves Rosaline at this point. She's going to be there. And if you go, you can compare her face with some that I shall show. So I'm going to show you other girls and know that the girl that you think is a swan is actually a crow, a beautiful bird to an ugly bird. She's going to be, just a crow compared to some of these other girls. So forget about Rosaline, but we're going to sneak into this party and I'm going to be able to do that thing I was promising you to do. Romeo says, yeah, right, basically. All right, so we're going to skip down here. And this question was just about Romeo's character. So we'll sort of like skip on down here. Whoops. All right, so let's go. Here's another, kind of poll question before you read scene 3. Have you ever been embarrassed? I would say that I have most definitely been embarrassed about stories when I was young, because that's what's happening in this scene. So now we have the first interaction with Juliet. We have Lady Capulet, which is her mother, and we have her nurse. Now, nurse is a different sense back then. It is what's called a wet nurse, which is a woman who would be sort of their nanny, but also would be the one who would breastfeed the children. Lady Capulet would be a very high-ranking lady in society, and she wouldn't want to, I know this sounds terrible, burden herself with breastfeeding her child. So they would hire someone who would also have a child of a similar age, and that would be this woman, the nurses, hung on with the family and sort of been her nanny, like I said, sort of her servant for the time being. And she's only 13 years old, so she's helped out. So these two are here, and then Juliet comes. Lady Capulet sends the nurse out, but then says, you know what, you can actually come back. Now, this whole side story here, okay, where the nurse is telling a joke. I'm not going to go into it because, to be honest, it's not that important to the story. If we were in class, I would tell you this big long story, and it's funny and it's pretty dirty. But all you have to know is that the whole point of her telling this story, the nurse, right down here, she goes on for this whole thing here, still nurse, is that the nurse actually knows Juliet better than her mother. That's all I want you to go on here, is that the nurse knows her better than her own mother does. Okay, because that's important throughout the rest of the play. So they keep going. They laugh a little bit. Okay, and then they finally get down to what this whole conversation is all about, is about thinking of marriage. Because Paris just asked her father, Lady Capulet says, oh, there's a man named Paris who seeks you for his love. And they're going back and forth. Lady Capulet says the same thing. Can you look at Paris's face tonight and see if you can fall in love with him, just like the father? Okay. Now, this idea of this extended metaphor here is she has all these comparisons, Paris with a book. Okay, they call him an unbound lover. They say something about a volume. That's about a book. They talk about gold glass, which could be on a book. Talk about a cover, which is referencing a bookstore. All these things are referencing covers and books. And about a third of you got that one right. Okay, so that's good. We keep going on. Juliet says, you know what? I'm not looking to fall in love with anybody. So I'll give it my best shot, but I don't count on it. But what's funny, what's ironic is that we know that she's going to love, she's going to fall in love with Romeo, and her parents are not going to be very happy about that, which is kind of... All right, so we move on to scene 4. Now, scene 4 is long because this is a long story, and we'll kind of skip through it as best we can. We don't really need necessarily to get into the details, but we meet a very important character. His name is Mercutio. Mercutio is Romeo's, probably his best friend. The three of them, Mercutio, Benvolio, and Romeo, are very, very tight. Okay, and they're going to the party that they're essentially going to crash the party, and they're wearing masks because it's a masquerade party. Okay, so we're going to skip a little bit here. Romeo's sort of getting cold feet. He's like, I'm not for this ambling. I don't really want to. I'm not really excited about going anymore. And Mercutio trying to get him to go. No, stop being such a heavy downer. Okay. And Romeo finally tells him why he doesn't want to go. And that's right here. Why, may one ask? Well, I don't want to go because I dreamt a dream tonight. I had a bad dream, he says essentially. Mercutio says, oh, yeah, dreamers often lie. Okay. And Romeo says, yeah, whatever you say. Now, Mercutio goes into this giant thing about this character called Queen Mab. And if you looked over here, it says Mercutio is describing Queen Mab, a fairy that brings dreams. Okay. And it's this huge thing. Think of her sort of like the Tooth Fairy, or one of those other kind of, fictional characters like that. It's a long speech. Okay. And again, this is a tough question, but this is really the ultimate point of all this, talking about this silly fairy that brings dreams is, well, what's the whole point of it? And he's trying to tell you that dreams are stupid. Okay. Because people dream what they want to dream. Okay. You can look into things too much, basically. And he says, don't let your bad dream, get in the way of you coming to this party. That's essentially what he's getting at. Okay. And, more than half of you didn't get this right, which is fine because it is extremely, extremely difficult to understand. But for the 30% that did, good job, because he says, don't worry about dreams. Okay. We skip on down here. We get a pretty intense little couple lines here from Romeo. I just don't want to forget here before we wrap it all up here. He says, he's describing his dream. He says, something hanging in the stars shall bitterly begin this fearful date. Something bad is going to happen today. And that was my dream. Something bad. Okay. And what happened is I'm going to lose my life in my breast from something and have an untimely death from something that starts today. Well, we know that that's true. This bad dream is actually true because he's going to meet Juliet, which is obviously bad because they ultimately die. So he has this bad feeling because of this dream, and that's pretty much the end of that. All right. So thanks so much, guys. Appreciate everything, your hard work. Stick with it. I promise you it's going to get easier. Thank you for listening to this video, and we will move on to Act 5, the big meeting between Romeo and Juliet.